All right, last night I watched a video and ultimately it made me go down a rabbit hole that ultimately I probably should have been predictively known where it was going to end up, but here we are. We're trying to figure out why gas stations like this one, are dictating the prices of prescription drugs. Ha, I know, right? What does a gas station have to do with prescription drugs? Well, here, I'll explain it to you. In 1939, Wisconsin passed a law. It was called the Minimum Markup Law. Essentially what it did is it took a lot of gas station items, gas, alcohol, tobacco. It took all of those items. There's other items involved, but it took all of those items, and what it said was that gas station A and gas station B need to be on an even playing field. Doesn't sound very capitalist to me, but that's what the law was designed to do. They need to be on an even playing field. So ultimately, what happened was they decided that there was going to be a minimum markup. Okay, so what is that? So essentially, let's say a gas station like Quick Trip buys a bottle of alcohol for $10. They are required to mark that up to a certain point. They cannot go below that threshold. If they go below that threshold, they are violating the law. So if they decided they wanted to buy that bottle of alcohol for $10 and sell it for $9.50, they would be breaking the law. So again, we're going to try to figure out what this has to do with pharmacies. But first, I'm going to tell you a little story. The whole reason this was brought to light is because a few years ago, a father lost a son. He lost a son because that son did not have enough money to purchase an inhaler that he needed for his severe asthma. And predictably what would happen is the son paid for his rent because that's what he could pay for, and having a place to live was more important than taking that risk on having an asthma attack. Well, predictably, the kid had an asthma attack. He died because he couldn't afford the prescription. Now, like any good father, he was angry. He decided that not only was he angry, he was going to take the steps necessary to change this law, the minimum markup law. But you're like asking yourself, what does that have to do with pharmaceuticals? Well, ultimately, pharmaceuticals were included in the minimum markup law. So this grieving father decided, let's start that nonprofit. Let's get this out in the open. Let's let people know that this ridiculous law that is put in place removes the pharmaceuticals, right? That's all he's trying to do, take the pharmaceuticals out of a minimum markup so that there can be more competition in the pharmaceutical industry, like pharmacists, so that they can lower the prices so that ultimately this doesn't happen to another person. So a piece of legislation has been introduced. It's called the Pharmacists Fight Back legislation. All it is trying to do, essentially, and now other things have been added to it, but what it was originally designed to do was take pharmaceutical items out of that minimum markup minimum, right? Just take those out. It makes complete sense. This doesn't impact the gas stations. It just doesn't. But this is where things get interesting. Gas stations like Quick Trip, and it should have been obvious to me, have a gas station lobby. Because why wouldn't they, right? Lobbyists are only helping everyone, right? Again, corporate greed. And this is where we are, corporate greed. So that lobby has been put in place to ultimately nix the legislation. You're like, why would they nix the legislation? All it is removing pharmaceuticals from that legislation. It shouldn't impact gas stations at all. Well, as we know, we can't go down that slippery slope of removing one item, because if they do that, they could remove more. That is their logic. They don't want to take pharmaceuticals out of there because what's next? Alcohol, tobacco, whatever else is on there? This is the world we're living in, where lobbyists get to determine whether or not we survive. So a law that shouldn't impact gas stations whatsoever, they have determined that it is worth blocking because, God forbid, they receive any healthy competition in their space where they currently monopolize mainly Wisconsin. That is Quick Trip. If you've been to Wisconsin, there's Quick Trips everywhere. So they don't want to lose control of their monopoly by having the gas station down the road be able to lower prices beyond what they want them at, because that will just hurt their bottom line. I cannot stand this country and where people are completely blind and they scream capitalists when this law, in fact, is anti-capitalist. It is not free market. It is ultimately pro-corporation and screwing individuals, and now it is impacting people's ability to live. A gas station is determining whether or not somebody lives or dies. Let that sink in. So please just get this out there so people know that the corruption is deep and it's everywhere.